You guys voted on worst creepypastas, huh? I have to admit, I've never been too interested in these stories, but I do see the appeal. So I had to do a bit of research for this video, and I gotta say, you guys are some weirdos for this. But as I am a slave to the polls, I will cover this. But as one gentleman mentioned, saying worst can be taken in a lot of ways here. So let's say scariest instead. Some disclaimers here before we get started. This is not my normal kind of video. I'm usually talking about much more lighthearted stuff, like figuring out what's the worst game between these two franchises and such. If you're new here and that sounds like it's up your alley, how about you give me a subscribe? But if you're not new, just know that this video is not indicative of any kind of future content. Next up, some of the things talked about here are not the most child-friendly. Now, my videos aren't for children anyway, because I cuss here. So if you're a kid watching my videos, do so at your own discretion, especially with this video. If you're an adult, I really don't think what's covered here is that bad. If you've seen most horror movies, these aren't going to be the worst thing ever. The real scare factor from creepypastas, I think, comes from how they take something that feels comfortable, like video game characters, and make some weird-ass stories. But besides that, again, if you've seen horror movies, I think you'll be okay here. It should go without being said that all of these are fictional. Nothing graphic will be shown, and I'll try to refrain from saying abhorrent things. But if you hear something you don't like, sorry dog, you clicked the video. Also, these aren't verbatim. These are, for the most part, paraphrased. Most of these creepypastas are so long that they could be a video on their own. And I mean a long-ass video for me. Anyway, I felt like I had to say all of that considering my audience is used to this sort of thing. Now, onto the video. Last time I started with Sonic, so I'll go with Mario now. Mario's scariest creepypastas. This is of course subjective. If you find other creepypastas scarier, let me know in the comments below. I spent a couple of days looking through a ton of these, and these are the ones I found that creeped me out the most. Not necessarily the most popular ones, but some of them also happen to be popular. I found 2 from each that creeped me out the most, while also not being too long for the sake of this video. And these are already pretty long. Starting at number 2 and working my way down to number 1, we've got A1 Are You? The narrator. I'll call him Logan. This is mentioned later. Logan is left alone on his 20th birthday, as it's the same day as his parents' anniversary. They do this every year to Logan. They've been doing it since he was 5. Logan has grown accustomed to it. I mean, you have to after 15 years. Logan and his family live in the countryside. Their house is a bit isolated from their neighbors. As it is his birthday, Logan decides to go ahead and play his favorite game, Mario & Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story. Logan got the game 5 years ago, and it's been his favorite ever since. Before booting it up, Logan takes a minute to admire the cover art, how simple yet charming it is. Once Logan boots up the game, he sees his old save file and plays through hard mode. For hours and hours, Logan played, beating Bowser and stomping over evil with the 2 brothers. As the wall clock ticked past 11:30, Logan knew his playthrough was about to pay off. Once Logan fought through the first half of the last boss fight with Bowser, Logan started up the second half of the fight as Mario and Luigi against Fawful. Looking for a challenge, Logan doesn't use any special moves and has Mario take quite a beating. Unfortunately, Mario goes down. Logan looks into his inventory and sees he only has one 1-up mushroom. That's weird, Logan thought. He had checked before the fight and knew he would have had at least 20 of them. Still, Logan uses it on Mario. Mario gets back up, everything looks fine. Logan takes out Fawful's last leg with Luigi, and that's where things take a bit of a turn for the worse. Instead of immediately going down, Fawful stares at Luigi with demonic eyes and serrated teeth. This only lasted seconds, and Fawful eventually went down. Logan figured it must have just been his own fatigue. It was late after all. Fawful, after being downed, readied an attack. Logan used Mario and Luigi to dodge any and all damage until the brothers just stopped responding. No counterattack commands popped up. Logan was forced to watch. The attack happened and the explosion led to a bright white light, blinding Logan for a moment. Once Logan regained his vision, he was shocked that his DSi was just stuck on this white light. So, seeing as it is now midnight and Logan is exhausted, he put down the DSi and went to turn off the lights around the house. And that's when it happened. An awful sound. A screeching scream. Logan paused for a moment before turning around towards his room. He knew exactly what it was, despite the fact that it should be impossible. Logan knew that sound was coming from Luigi. Logan looked at his DSi and stared at it, hearing Luigi screaming. The sounds were awful. Bones snapping. Disembowelment. Luigi screamed for Mario, who wasn't there. After hearing what sounded like a beast swallowing, Boom, the screams were over, and the DSI shut off on its own. Logan decided, as crazy as that was, that he probably just needed some sleep. After a night's sleep, Logan went on to shower when he noticed his eyes were a different color. They were gray, when Logan always had a hazel color. That's weird. How do your eyes just change color? It must be his headache. After heading outside to get some fresh air, Logan basked in the cool breeze until he noticed all of the grass had lost its green color. It was now just gray. Logan banged his head a couple of times on the side of the house, trying to figure out what the hell was going on here, but that didn't help. Eventually, he ignored the grass and walked to the mailbox. Sure enough, inside somebody sent him a birthday package. With no sender address on it, Logan opened the package to find an envelope. The envelope read, "To Ogun," which is weird. Why would the L in his name not be there? "To our very special boy. We thought that this would cheer you up. Best wishes, Mom and Dad." Despite the letter L constantly being missing, Logan was happy to see it. Still, it was weird that it wasn't in his parents' handwriting. Looking through the package, there was also a Mario hat. This was a pretty cool gift, but it was weirdly warm. Nevertheless, Logan was happy to see it. He was back in a Mario mood and went back up to his room to play some more, until he found something weird. All of his game cases seemed to have Mario missing his hat, and Mario was crying. Worse than that though, Luigi had been filled in with dark colors. It looked like Luigi's outline had been filled in with dark crayons. Touching the outline of Luigi gave Logan excruciating pain. Even the poster of Luigi on the wall had been scratched out, and the copy of Luigi's Mansion was just gone. Logan was losing his mind. He started to cry, feeling more and more scared with every passing moment. Once Logan grabbed his DSI, thinking of it as his real enemy, he began playing Bowser's Inside Story. Only, Luigi was nowhere to be found. Certain letters on the title screen were now bolder than others. When looking at only those letters, they read A1. Logan didn't know what that meant, but he had to ignore that. Into the game, every icon of Luigi was missing, and every L was missing as well. Logan noticed that there was a third save file when the game only allows for 2. He went ahead and selected it. The opening cutscene was gone, and Peach's castle wasn't looking good. Mario was missing his hat, and he looked sad and pale. This was not the normal Mario at all. Logan eventually found a room full of toads, and they were all wearing Fawful masks. They all said, "Oh, it's just you. Did you enjoy the 1-up mushroom? Not so super, are you, Redcap? Defect." The Toads were clearly aware of what happened outside of this save file, and they were mad at Logan for it. Entering the conference room, the Toads said, "A1, are you? A pay face is a gitty face." One Toad grabbed Mario's hammer, saying, "This is a hero's hammer. It's about time you've returned it." The scene ended with Toad attacking Mario and dragging his body out of the room. In the next room, Mario was gripped by a giant statue of Fawful. The scene stayed like this for hours. Logan tried to never let his eyes leave the screen, worried he would miss something. Hours passed without the screen changing. Eventually, he fell asleep with the DSI in his hands. When he woke, it had died. Trying to charge the DSI was not only useless, but it also shocked him. After Logan fell asleep again, he was woken up by a loud, screeching noise outside of his window. It sounded unnaturally loud. After it eventually stopped, Logan finally got up to check it out. Not a single scratch on the window. It was approaching 3 a.m. and this was a pretty scary thing to be happening outside. Logan grabbed a steel baseball bat and went straight for the front door. Walking around outside, Logan saw nothing, heard nothing. It's almost as if nothing was making that noise, but that should be impossible. Approaching his own window to his bedroom, Logan saw a hat sitting under his windowsill. It was just like the Mario cap he received, but gray. Logan realized he can't see green right now. The hat was green. After knocking it to the ground, Logan saw there was no L there, just a blank space. Inside the hat was a note that read, "A1, are you?" This was the exact message Toad gave him in-game. This was really freaking Logan out. How could anyone know about that? On the other side of the paper, there was another note. What a nice gift. Once Logan picked up the hat, he realized there was something else inside. A pistol. A loaded pistol with its safety off. Taking the pistol, realizing it was his best means of self-defense, Logan pointed it towards a loud noise he heard when nothing was there. Noticing the mailbox flag was flipped again, Logan walked over and opened it, noticing another note. "A you need is you." Logan, feeling tired of all these riddles, loud noises, and scary imagery, yelled out, "I read your notes. I played your game. I deserve an answer." He dropped to the ground, screaming, "Who are you?" And that's when he flipped the paper and noticed more words. And Fawful. Logan was shocked. Fawful can't be behind this. He isn't real. He noticed one more thing in the mailbox. his mother's wedding ring, cracked and with warm drips of blood around the rim. Knowing his parents must have suffered, Logan bawled his eyes out for several minutes before hearing another sound. He heard the noise of Fawful's speech coming from his room. It must have been from his DSi, but once Logan made it to his room, the DSi was nowhere to be seen. Looking around, he finally noticed a quiet noise coming from his pocket. His DSi was there. Somehow. He decided to shoot at it in his pocket to end all of this. But the bullet didn't hit the DSi. It went straight through to his leg. The DSi was untouched, and Logan's blood was black, the same color as the writing in all of those notes. Shooting at the DSi again and hitting his leg again, Logan decided he wasn't going to do that a third time. He was in agony over the pain. He took the DSi out of his pocket and opened it, seeing a black screen. That is, until Fawful entered the picture from the left. It was the first time Logan had seen green all day. Fawful talked to Logan, asking if he was lonely. His words somehow comforted Logan. Realizing Fawful somehow makes him happy, Logan realized what he had to do. He placed the DSi back into his pocket and shot himself in the hand. Only this time it didn't hurt. After coating his hand in blood, Logan gripped his DSi, now seeing it as a prison for Fawful, and chanted, "Alone, are you? That is such badness. All you need is you, and Fawful." The chant caused the DSi to rupture and molded with him through his gunshot wounds. He could see the changes taking effect, with his eyes turning red. He was no longer Logan. He didn't feel like he was only Logan. He saw himself as us. The two laughed, feeling invincible in their newfound body. Even a gunshot to the head didn't hurt. Logan asked, "Think the others would like our little story, Master?" And the response was, "Of course." Okay, that's A1 Are You. It's one of my favorites that I read. It's spooky and shoots a little too close to the home. The scary noises, the feeling of isolation that Logan already felt, how close Logan felt to this game that was suddenly tormenting him. A lot of other creepypastas are fucking stupid, man, but this one hits hard. I skipped many details for the sake of time, but the link to the full story is in the description. Though I will say, who the hell doesn't take the DSi out of their pocket before shooting themselves in the leg? Especially twice. The next one, number 1, is definitely scarier, and also shorter. Hallelujah. This is Super Mario 64, Damned. I could never in my wildest nightmares have ever imagined the horrors that could plague even the most simple of life's enjoyments. The darkness that could invade any world, whether it be real or fictional. It all started the day me and my girlfriend were talking about video games we used to play growing up, and games that we used to enjoy. Over the years of my childhood, I've collected several games pertaining to several different consoles, but we both found the topic of Nintendo 64 to be the most fun. So that day, we decided to pick up one from my uncle's video game store, and perhaps even pick up one of the greatest Nintendo 64 titles, Mario 64. Now, when we got there, it took some time and a lot of browsing, but we were able to find the game after about an hour or so in several bins he had placed throughout the store. The only copy of it he had appeared. As well as that, we found a Nintendo 64, the very last one that he had in stock, ironically. And the best part about it was, he gave it to us for free. He told me that it had been bought and returned nearly 15 times since it came into his possession, and now he was just looking to get rid of it. He also told me that, ironically, the game was always returned with it as well, as they always seemed to be bought together. He had heard something was wrong with one or the other, and that some people even went as far as to tell him that they were evil, made in hell, things like that. Seeing as how he only heard the story from 3 out of 15 customers, I brushed it off as just some hysterical story told by people who decided they simply didn't want to keep the system. An excuse, if you will. And gave him $20 for Super Mario 64. Cheap jerk gave me the Nintendo 64 for free though. We went back home after being gone for about an hour and a half. When I got home, I laid the system by my living room TV and started rummaging through old boxes where I kept all sorts of games, ranging from classic Atari games to the ever-popular Dreamcast. It was actually sort of strange, because in these boxes I found that I owned every major console except for a Nintendo 64. Well, until now anyway. I pulled out my box with all of the Nintendo 64 games in it and began to dig through it. I found games like Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, as well as its sequel, Majora's Mask, and 2 Castlevania titles for the system itself, and so on. Then, it was time to hook it up. After everything was set up, my girlfriend decided that she wanted to put in Super Mario 64 first. And after some effort, the game was ready to go. "It's a me, Mario," it called out in its upbeat pitch. My girlfriend decided to mess with Mario's face a bit before finally pressing start on our purple controller, and the screen transitioned to the file select screen. There were some files already in the game. In fact, all 4 slots were filled, each having just started the game, because there were no stars on any of the files, so we started deleting them. After we deleted one file, however, the game froze, and there was a deafening screech coming from our TV speakers, and it sounded almost as if someone was screaming from the game itself. My girlfriend turned off the system after about 5 seconds. After a moment or so, she flipped it back on and we went back to the file select screen. Strangely enough, the file that we had deleted on file 1 was back, and this time it had 66 stars, even though previously it had none. So once more she deleted it, and again it made a loud screeching sound. This time I could swear to God it was louder than before, to the point where we both fell back while covering our ears. As I was closer to the plug than the system itself, I jerked it out of the wall. This time, before we bothered trying, I took the game out of the system and took it into the kitchen. It turned out that it was really gusty, which explained, at least to me, why the game was reacting the way it was, although it was still pretty weird. After cleaning it with a Q-tip, I took it back into the living room. I handed it to my girlfriend, she plugged the console back into the wall, and we were ready to go. By now it was getting dark out. There was no light in the room, and we couldn't plug in our lamp because the system and TV took up the outlet. So we were forced to play in the dark. For me, something didn't feel right, because for some reason I was filled with a sense of nervousness that I couldn't quite explain. I shook it off and turned on the system. When we were back to the file select screen, each file that was there previously was gone, oddly enough, which to me confirmed my suspicion that it was just a dirty game messing up. So we started a new game on file 1, and the screen lagged like it was a CD or something. But after about a minute, it started up normally. We got the opening scene with Peach inviting Mario to the castle, and the camera, as usual, followed up the pathway to the giant green pipe which Mario leaped out of. My girlfriend was in control of the game and took Mario directly to the castle. When she opened the door to the castle, there was a prolonged pause which made me nervous. Once again, the loud screeching that ruined our game previously shot through our ears, and it felt like glass was jabbed into my eardrums. We were both overwhelmed because of the terrible screaming and couldn't even think to reach for the system to the plug. After about 30 seconds, it stopped and we looked up to the TV. Mario had somehow found his way to Big Boo's haunt, as the mansion that had never appeared this creepy when I used to play it loomed over Mario's head ominously. What the hell? I said as I regained myself. My girlfriend was still getting herself together, and it took her a minute to process what was going on. I took the controller now and took a good look at the mansion itself. It was nothing like what it was supposed to be. It had castle-like features actually, and was covered totally in blood and rust. The sky had black and red colors about it, complemented by the black clouds that seemed to pass by in an instant. I noticed that a new tower was now coming out of the mansion, and upon getting a good look at it, I noticed several figures hanging from it. The whole screen faded to white, like it does in the entrance room when you look up at the skylight and go to the world that you obtained the wing cap in. When Mario reappeared, he had somehow made it on top of the tower, on a platform that went all the way around. The sky had a gloomy look to it as each cloud passed over the tower, as dark as the night sky, and the lightning began to rule the sky and illuminate the clouds in a thunderous wake. I tried for the first time to move Mario forward, but a bolt of lightning stopped any movement that I was willing to make at the moment. I dropped the controller. My heart began to race. I didn't know what to expect, and I could see by the look in my girlfriend's eyes that a strong sense of paranoia had come over her, because I constantly noticed her looking back behind us in the shadows that covered the room. With hesitation, I took the controller in hand and moved Mario forward about a foot or so, before something fell from the top of the screen and the camera zoomed in on it. It was a depiction of Mario, with a noose around his neck. We both yelled out and dropped the controller on the floor. I moved back as quickly as possible. Mario's clothes were ripped all over, exposing several parts of his body. Underneath the clothes, we could make out stab wounds from either a knife or a dagger, which more than likely caused the blood splatter all over his skin and remaining clothing. But the most grotesque part about the image were that his eyelids and mouth were sewn shut and blood trickling down his cheeks and chin. I was appalled by the gruesome sight. My heart was racing, and I would swear to this day that at that moment the dead Mario fell from the top of the screen that I heard something run into my bedroom. All of the hung figures were of Mario, all the exact same, with eyelids and mouth sewn shut and stab wounds all over their bodies. I worked up all the courage I could muster. I again unplugged the Nintendo 64, which turned off, but not at that instant. Before the TV screen went black, the hung Mario's face, underneath his sewn lips, was smirking at us. I didn't want to get up, not even to turn on the lights. I wanted to remain in that exact spot sitting down, because at least there I felt somewhat safe. But for my girlfriend's sake, I plugged in the lamp and lit the room up. Everything was peaceful, perhaps a calm after the storm, and I took a deep breath and sat back down. I couldn't get that image out of my head, that smirk. I felt powerless as to what my mind wanted to remain on. I sat on the floor next to my girlfriend and hugged her, picked her up, and took her to bed. Who in the hell would make a game like that? It had to be the game. It had to be hacked. It's the only thing that made any sense to me. What I saw in that game, I would define as evil in its sickest form. Without a word between us as we both laid in bed for what felt like hours before one of us finally broke the silence, she told me that she wanted to get rid of that game as soon as possible. As it was already late, I decided that it would be best to wait until tomorrow, because I was sure that my uncle's store was closed and GameStop doesn't take games that old. So we stayed in bed and agreed that we would not play that game again. But I couldn't get that game out of my head. I wanted to know why, or how this game was done. My curiosity got the better of me in the end, and after she had fallen asleep, I quietly got out of bed, went back into the living room, plugged in the Nintendo 64, and didn't turn it on. I didn't have to. The game started itself, and not only that, it picked up exactly where it left off. I was astounded by this because I had never seen the Nintendo 64 do anything like that. Right then and there, I knew there was something more to this than I knew, and I had to know what. I was fascinated, drawn in perhaps. I got a good look around the tower. Despite being disgusted, I was morbidly fascinated by the entire scene. The paranoia it could convey was intriguing. After a few minutes of looking around, I pressed the pause button, and again the screen faded, this time to black. It took me all the way back to the file select screen, and I found myself with more questions than answers. All the files were back, again. File 1 had 66 stars, while files 2, 3, and 4 had none. I tried to remember back to when we picked the file, and I was certain that they were not there before. I tried loading file 4 first, and in response, the game showed me a picture of Mario dead in a pool of his own blood with his eyeballs and entrails hanging out. After a shudder, it allowed me to hit B and go back. I tried loading file 3, and again I got another appalling picture. It was Mario once again, staring directly into the screen with bloodshot eyes that looked so close to real that I really thought they were. His mouth was gaping open and his tongue was missing. Well, it was missing from his mouth at least. I examined further and realized that Mario's tongue was wrapped around his throat and that he was being strangled with it. I heard a chuckle of sorts, not from the game, but it sounded like it was directly behind me. I ignored it against my better judgment. I tried to start up file 2 now, and a video began to play. Mario was strapped down on a table in a decrepit version of the castle's entrance hall. The stones were all black, blood oozing from the cracks between each of them. Curtains that hung from the ceiling were tattered and falling apart. They appeared to be worn with the years. In the background, Peach and Toadstool were strapped to both sides of the door that led to the basement area. Toadstool had the mushroom on his head torn off. I could make out his skull showing through the still fresh wound. He was obviously dead. Peach sent me into a state of awe. Her skin was peeled off, and all I could see fully formed was her head, which remained untouched. Jesus Christ, I said silently as the video continued. Mario struggled for freedom as the door upstairs opened and a black mass slowly came through. Its footsteps solemnly echoed through the silent hall. The curtains on the ceiling blew casually to its passing as it moved down the steps towards him. Mario pulled and pulled but found no way to escape the situation that he had found himself in, and in response he began to beg for his life and pray. The black mass inched ever closer to the hero. It seemed as though Mario had just given up. The black mass walked around the table and stopped directly in front of Mario. Again, the hero begged, pleaded for his life. He told the black mass that he would do anything, only spare for him any crime that he committed against it. I saw a tear roll down Mario's cheek, and he closed his eyes tightly, a rope tied around his neck. He gagged and took in only heavy breaths. I couldn't see a hand so much as touch the rope, or where it even came from, but it was indeed there. With just enough slack so that Mario could breathe, deep lacerations cut through Mario's clothes, and blood by the gallons covered him in a crimson pool. He screamed, begged, pleaded, asked for death, but it wasn't given to him. Not yet anyways. The cuts continued until the floor was covered in a dark red liquid exuding slowly to the floor. Finally, the swipes and stabs ceased altogether, and there was a deep, methodical silence that only Mario's gasps of misery filled. Before I could do so much as think on what I had just seen, his eyes and mouth were forced shut and I could see it for myself. A black needle going through both of his eyelids and mouth simultaneously, effectively silencing him other than his muffled screams. Even more blood came from the fresh wounds and covered up his face. The rope tightened around Mario's neck, although he made no effort to escape. It was over. After a few short grunts, Mario was silent altogether. With not so much as a breath or a movement, his face was terror personified. And even though this was a video game, the pain one would have to endure, the torture, my God. Again, before the screen faded to black, that Mario smirked at me. I sat in silence. The title screen with Mario's head came up on screen, only it wasn't the same Mario. The background was all black and the Mario was the same Mario from the scene that I just watched. He had that smirk still on. After much debate, I decided to keep going. I went to the file select screen and, with all the courage that my heart could muster, I loaded file 1, 66 stars. The game loaded to a demonic laugh and a black sky filled with blood-red clouds. Repeatedly, I could hear a dark, brooding voice saying game over, like Mario would after you lost all of your lives. The Mario that I was controlling was the same Mario I had seen killed on the title select screen. Screams, torment, bodies littered the pathway to the castle. The bodies of Peach, several Toads, and at the end, a dead Bowser, whose head was missing and whose body was impaled on a spike right outside of the bridge. I entered the castle and found myself back at Big Boo's haunt. I didn't question it anymore. I just went with it. The scene had not changed, not even slightly. And ignoring all of the graphic details, I entered the mansion, to what I was sure would strike my heart in some way, shape, or form. I could feel something circling and enclosing around me. I ignored it. I had to. I needed to know what this was, or what was going on. Something whispered in my ear. I was sure of it. I gulped as the screen transitioned to the dark entrance hall of Big Boo's haunt, the room with all of the doors. The bodies of faceless Marios were hung all over the ceiling, illuminated only by torches. I could feel sweat trickling down the back of my neck as I saw a stand-alone figure all the way on the upper balcony. I moved Mario slowly towards it. I was afraid. I'm more than willing to admit that, and have never been more afraid in my life. I jumped up the steps, one at a time, moving cautiously and carefully. It was another hung man, that was for certain, but who it was I'll never forget. As I reached the body, I hesitated, but zoomed in on it. I began to tremble, my hands barely holding the controller. The figure was indeed a man hung by a rope. That man had his eyes and mouth sewn shut just like Mario and was bleeding profusely from his eye sockets. That man, in all of his pain, was me. He let out a scream, something haunting and bone-chilling, a wail like nothing I'd ever heard. The screen began to flicker and turn to static. I tried to turn off the system, I tried to unplug it, and nothing worked. The TV wouldn't even turn off. I saw my corpse through the static burning as its haunting wail had yet to cease. Mario turned his head 180 degrees and looked at the screen, and with a smirk on his face, let out a wail just like I did. My head began to hurt and throb. I fell to the floor, and the last thing that I remember from that night was seeing a black mass hovering over me. That was wild. How the story leaves us wondering what the hell happened to him and his girlfriend in the end, how it was entirely self-contained in the game until the end. What really gets me here were the descriptions of Mario's eyes and mouth. I don't fuck with that at all. I will say, that Mario 1 kept saying shit like, if you will, or perhaps, when it didn't need to. Also, calling your uncle cheap when he gave you the Nintendo 64 for free is a tough sell for me. Alright, moving on ahead, we're looking at Sonic Creepypastas. This was really hard to narrow it down to 2. I was originally going to do 3, but man, that Mario one was long as hell. And believe me, that shortened version I gave of A1RU was tame compared to some creepypastas out there. For Sonic, the first I'm gonna do is Maria's Revenge. A person, I'll call him Freddy, was getting into Wii hacking when they started getting into ripping their own games for emulators. Freddy got his Sonic Adventure 2 Battle onto his Dolphin emulator and immediately did nothing but play it for days on end. Sleep, eat, work, and play. All the way until he 100%ed the game. It was one day when Freddy was playing Chow Karate. He got the last emblem and realized he has 100%ed this game twice now. It was about time Freddy put the game to rest. Unfortunately, Freddy wasn't strong enough. He went back in, started Googling unlockable secrets for the game. And, probably unfortunately for him, Freddy found out that the Maria Robotnik menu theme exists. He was ecstatic. A new menu theme is awesome. Unfortunately, you need to connect a Game Boy Advance to your GameCube to get it to work. Someone did make a modifier for the Dolphin emulator to connect it with the Game Boy Advance though, so Freddy went with that. Freddy got himself the theme, immediately felt happy, and went to the menu screen to turn it on. That's when everything went wrong. Windows 7 message saying dolphin.exe has stopped working. Eventually, Freddy had to shut down the game, and all he could do was hope he didn't lose progress. After relaunching the game, Freddy found Maria's background theme was tearing through graphics. The logos were broken. It became even more apparent when the opening movie started and Maria was still in the background. The background objects almost seemed to be fighting each other. The music sounded terrible and the game was incredibly laggy. It was so laggy, Freddy had time to start screen recording and everything. Freddy saw he didn't even have the Maria theme anymore. which is really weird considering he's seeing Maria everywhere. So he went into the Chow garden to see if he can buy it again. When he got there, he found a new egg, one he'd never seen before. He was frustrated, so Freddy threw the egg at a wall. When it cracked and broke open, the game crashed when Freddy tried to look at this new Chow. Before he closed the game, Freddy got a screenshot of what he was seeing. It looked like the Chow had Maria's hair. But he also saw Maria standing there, staring at Shadow. That was enough to make Freddy get really nervous. Why the hell is Maria here? What is this? How could this even be happening? Freddy relaunched the game and figured he wasn't going to mess with the themes. Instead, he just went to the game as per usual. Launching Radical Highway from story mode, the cutscene played normally until Maria's part came up. The sound was all messed up, and the audio said, "All the people do it. I beg. All the people do it. I beg. All the people do it. I beg. No. I beg. No. I beg. No." But the word no was in Shadow's voice. Once that was over, the stage started. The mission objective said, break through the besieging military, as per usual. But all the letters were grayed out except for A, R, I, M, and A. It was immediately clear to Freddy the letters were meant to spell out Maria. The bigger issue was, in the background behind Shadow, Freddy saw Maria's head and shoulders at the sky. As Freddy played through the game, he never once lost sight of Maria. She was always on screen in some capacity, whether it be her face, back, hands, legs, it didn't matter. The cutscene of Gerald Robotnik started playing as well, and about halfway through the cutscene, Maria started fading in and out of the scene. One pose shocked Freddy though. He saw her on her back with her legs spread a little too far. This freaked Freddy out. He also saw a pose of her completely naked with blood. How can this be in the game? She's a minor, and this is a kid's game, Freddy thought. At the end of the level, instead of getting an S rank, which Freddy knew he deserved, he got Maria's head as a rank. After that level, the game skipped multiple levels all the way to the countdown before White Jungle. While the cutscene was the same as usual, the subtitles were different. Instead of being a conversation between Shadow and Rouge, it was Gerald, all the people do it, all the scientists on the Ark. When I wake, when I sleep, they look. They do things. I do not know why it hurts. I cannot walk. I am drugged down by Gerald. No. The game then froze on the cutscene of Maria leaning over the control panel. As it was frozen on the screen and Task Manager said the game is still running, Freddy noticed the stars behind Maria in the cutscene were arranged in a pattern. When Freddy saw the gap in between stars, he noticed the gap spelled kill. The game then continued as normal, starting up with White Jungle. The objective for the stage says, cut through the jungle in 10 minutes. But like last time, certain letters were grayed out. The ones that weren't were T, R, E, J, U, and L, and the exclamation point. Freddy never figured out what these letters meant. Your guess is as good as mine. Seeing Maria in the sky again, Freddy decided to take a break from playing and figure out what was going on with the screenshots and recordings he's collected. Freddy looked through the subtitles said during the White Jungle cutscene. They did things? They hurt Maria? Were they doing experiments on her? In her sleep? Were they trying to cure her of her neuroimmune deficiency? Then Freddy remembered the images of Maria, naked and bleeding. Oh my god, Freddy said. Did Gerald and these other men commit acts to Maria? Freddy paced back and forth trying to figure out what all this meant. Is that why Maria loved Shadow so much? Because he never touched her? In the Japanese version of Sonic Adventure 2, Maria was placed on the Ark because her disease was contagious and deadly. If it was originally meant to be contagious, did the other scientists aboard the Ark have it too? Was it just that they had nothing else to live for and did what they did because of that? All of this explains why Gunn was so willing to kill everyone on board, to get rid of the virus. Still, if this is the original story Sega had intended, what the hell was Sega thinking? They know how old Maria is. Did Sega remove all of these plot elements last second? Did they later release Shadow the Hedgehog just to poorly cover up this nonsense? Freddy started to feel sorry for her. She was young. Freddy wished he could help her, as he experienced pretty messed up stuff in his childhood too, deciding he would do whatever Maria wanted him to. Once he beat White Jungle, Freddy got Maria's head rank again. The game instantly jumped to the cutscene of Shadow and Sonic going super. Maria was of course there. She was fading in and out of them. Eventually the scene zoomed in to look just at Shadow, then to a black screen with just Shadow in it. His aura was gone, Shadow's animation was frozen, and Live and Learn was playing, but it was slowed down and choppy. Freddy saw Maria in the background on top of colors fading in and out. She seemed to be falling while holding her chest. Freddy decided to move forward, though the controls were very stiff. To the side, Freddy saw Gerald Robotnik in a chair. Text appeared saying, "For all the people on that planet, kill him." Freddy floated around Gerald, who had a different model than usual. New text appeared saying, "Shadow, do it for me, so we can be happy." Freddy attacked Gerald, and the game froze. The text "Thank you," was written in white text on a black background. Upon relaunching the game, there was no logo, no license by Nintendo, just "thank you" again. So that one has by far the happiest ending out of all of these. It's much less scary and more so unnerving than the last two. One discovery after another leading the narrator, Freddy, to the conclusion was nerve-wracking. While unlike the others, the narrator isn't actually harmed, this story is entirely contained within the game being played, but it is a roller coaster. Unlike the next one, the Sonic Creepypasta that has kept me thinking about it for days. It's really bad. And the imagery isn't something that I love to see. This one is called Starved. Luckily, this one is much shorter than the others. Robotnik is beaten by Sonic after Sonic 1. Fixing up his base, he scrounges for food that is scarce. Robotnik finds a charred Flicky and eats it, though it's pretty gross. He actually ends up liking the flavor. He then kept killing Flickies with whatever tools he had, over and over again, just to satiate his newfound hunger, until he was able to leave Scrap Brain Zone. Once gone, he used his badniks, repurposed them, and had them capture critters and children, cooking them on their way back to starved Robotnik. His appetite only grew as he lost his sanity to this obsession. Robotnik began to rot. So, to hide it, he ended up covering himself with a mask and gloves. Robotnik began the construction of prototype mecha T01, also known as Furnace, to move on to bigger prey. His hunger was beginning to be too much for him, so he set his sights on Little Planet. Once Little Planet was chained, he sent Mecha T01 in there to look for Amy. By the time Sonic went in, he saw Robotnik and prototype Mecha T01 as they stood above Amy's corpse with Eggman eating her. Sonic was disgusted by what he saw, but knew he immediately had to get out of there. Robotnik sent Mecha T01 after Sonic and gave chase as Sonic ran away. But Sonic eventually noticed that the door he came in through was closed, leaving him in there. The chase went over and over the base, all around the place with these two speeding around. Sonic ran for his life before he finally tripped and T01 got him. The first thing T01 did was smash Sonic's head into the ground, killing him. Robotnik ordered T01 to take Sonic's body away, and now Robotnik only eats Sonic's body on special occasion. Without Sonic to stop him, he went ahead and took over Little Planet, eating anything he could. Eventually, Tails came looking for Sonic, and Robotnik became absolutely obsessed with getting Tails. Once Tails enters Little Planet, he slowly approaches Robotnik's base. Upon entering, Tails is shocked by the first thing he saw being Robotnik eating Sonic on a silver platter. Tails was so scared he couldn't move, which gave Robotnik plenty of time to capture Tails and rip off one of his tails. In anger, Tails managed to stab Robotnik in the hand. This actually severed some important stuff and made his hand absolutely useless. He couldn't move it anymore. Protecting its master, T01 smashed Tails' head in the same way it did to Sonic. And Robotnik says, "It won't get out of my head. Holding you down, ripping this thing right off, all with my bare hands. I can't stop thinking about it. I hope my suspicions are true. I hope you're still alive, listening to me." Now with the time stones from Sonic CD, Robotnik gets nearly infinite food as he can just keep going back over and over. He goes back to Stardust Speedway and relives the events over and over, even redoing the Tails incident, killing him again and again. Of course, this was summarized by me. There were less discoveries to be made here, so I was able to shorten it even more than the other ones. This one is just nasty to me, man. Just thinking of the pain Sonic and Tails go through at the hands of this psychopath, and the fact that he can keep doing it over and over with the time stones. What the fuck, man? Between Starved and Super Mario 64 Damned, I think I have to give this one to Mario. The imagery and the fact that it was actually happening to our guy is just fucked up. I like a creepypasta that is entirely contained in universe, but the real scare is putting yourself in the shoes of the narrator. Our winner here is Mario. Now, this is only a list of 4 creepypastas. There's plenty more of them out there, and I'm sure there's plenty more I didn't see. And there's plenty more out there that you'll probably find more unnerving than these 4. Check them out, if you dare. But remember, they're all fake anyway. Hope you liked the video. Make sure to subscribe. I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. See you later.